What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another live Thursday night show from, well, the Goat Rope office, not the garage. What up, Joe? Kamar. I've been wanting to talk to you in particular. Hey, Ethan. Kamar, specifically about the core. Because I ran into an issue last weekend that made me think about you. What up, Daily Soul? What is going on? Welcome back. We've got the 3D printer just going to town in the background. So, I was thinking about, okay, here's the long and short of it. I ran into an issue where my fuel pump and fan outputs were not working on the core last weekend. And I'm like, what in the world? I've gone in, I changed all the settings, I've forced them to on, I've changed the outputs. It's not outputting anything. But I figured out what it was. It was very interesting. One of the pins in my connector for the throttle body came loose. It was the ground, in fact. So the throttle body was no longer responding. I fixed that and did the relearn the automatic calibration for the throttle body, and then suddenly they started working again. Very interesting. What's a dowel pin? What were you trying to say? Yeah. Well, in long story short, I was trying to, on the harness, the part that the flying leads for the fan control, I didn't want to use those. I wanted to use some of the outputs on the I/O harness, the 20 slot thing that if you're doing the trans control for like a 4L60 or 4L80, it comes with a sub harness that plugs in. I wanted to use a couple of those outputs instead. No, I'm drive-by-wire, but you still have to do it even if you're drive-by-cable. You have to do that automatic learn, where it's learning the pedal and the throttle position and all that stuff, or else the outputs are just flat out disabled, which was interesting. So my guess is one of the engineers, I don't know this is a guess, one of the engineers that was working on the software said, if we don't have logical throttle stuff going on, we want to make sure that the car will not run for safety's sake. Line trans up to the motor, keep the trans from steering the trans bolts. Oh, dowel pins, trying to pull the dowel pins. Gotcha. I should have been able to figure that out. So, because of that, I wanted you to, I didn't know if you still had your old unit, but I wanted you to look into that and get back to me. So if you end up doing it this weekend or something like that, shoot me an email and let me know what you find out. I actually went over to your YouTube channel and left a comment on a vehicle that you posted for sale like 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, yeah, keep me posted because I'll be interested to see if it's just a situation like that, because literally that's what I noticed is like fuel pump wasn't doing anything. Like I got all that stuff wired up, fuel pump. I needed a couple fittings to finish the fuel system install, so that's going to happen this weekend. Technically, I think all the wiring will be done this weekend, so we could, in theory. Why is my what are you doing here? Okay, there the printer goes. So other than that, I actually had a awesome video conference with one of the engineers from HP Tuners. I don't know how much I can talk about But we spent at least an hour talking about some features that are coming out, some things that I'd like to see, and then just overall going through some of the software, and he was showing me some of some of the ins and outs on setting up the different tables and graphs and stuff like that I'll dive into very shortly, and do some videos on. So is the core still worth it, even with some speed bumps? So, Daily Soul, listen, you can't ask me. Like, I am a paid shill for HP Tuners. So, I'm not the person you should be getting your opinions from on the core. So, I will tell you that the development side of it is very robust. There's a lot of cool stuff going. Oh, no. Oh, I got a print issue right there. Oh, well, this is a test print. Oh, I got another one over on this side. Sorry, I get so caught up looking at my own stuff printing. This is for all the ADHD kids out there. Hey, Mitch. First time I tuned in a while. See what I did there? Yeah, welcome back. Good to see you. Always glad to see some old school familiar faces. So I don't know. Listen, I'm happy with what I've gotten into on the core side of stuff. Specifically, I don't know. You guys are going to get me in trouble. So I was working on the Turbolamic integration, getting the Turbolamic to work with the core, getting all that stuff. I spent last weekend really kind of focused in on that. And they were already on top of it, like, which is awesome. So that's a huge win. GM Dash compatibility. Okay, so that's very interesting, conditionally accepted, because the cool thing about the core that some of the other standalones that aren't branded Holley have great compatibility as long as you can figure out the CAN bus stuff. The core's CAN bus setup is one of the easiest CAN bus setups I've ever messed with. And so if it comes down to replicating data to control the dash, that's not going to be an issue. 6L80 support currently not there. And natively, I think what you're going to see is a lot of stuff on the 6L80 is going to require separate modules. And it's a lot kind of like how I'm doing with the 8-speed, the 8 HP from ZF, is because the TCU is in there. Getting stuff to work with the TCU that's already in place is very complicated and oftentimes not worthwhile because they don't work well once that's been done. And so what I think that you will probably see, oh no, that's a bolt hole. Oop, that's a bolt hole. Sorry, I got distracted. That's why that looks weird. What we really need to see is a TCM bypass like the ZF 8HP setup. I designed another center trim piece for the Camaro, and I wanted to print out a test print. Yeah. And so, Octane, and that's going to be the answer going forward, is that's what you're going to have to do. But you're not going to get the operation that you necessarily want by going that route. And I'll tell you why. The difference between what I'm doing with an 8 HP and what somebody with a Holley and a 6L8 is doing is that I'm going to have trans brake. I'm going to have virtual clutch. I'm going to have paddle shift. I'm going to have all of those features from the get-go. Features that aren't even available on a 6L80, no matter what you do, I'm going to have all those. And it's going to cost me probably $3,000 less than a 6L80. So I've said it before and I'll say it again. 6L80s are dead. So don't even go down that route. So we're talking about an 8-speed transmission that is significantly smaller than a 6-speed transmission that holds the same amount of torque, that shifts more than twice as fast. Like, there's absolutely no reason to use a 6L80 anymore. And so you're going to, yeah, exactly. You're going to be seeing that the wave of the future is the ZF8 HP transmission. Be it an 8 HP55, an 8 HP60, an 8 HP70, an 8 HP90. They've got transmissions that are rated up to 900 Newton meters, like, and has all of the crazy stuff that you can do. Like, it's just, the GM transmissions are just, yeah, exactly. What up, Andrew? Yeah, I mean, and still going to be Power Glide Turbo 400s are going to be the ways to go if that's what you're looking for. But, like, I am super glad my buddy Corey got me on this 8 HP train, and it's just the way, it's the way to go. So, and unfortunately, the integration with Holley absolutely sucks. So, you know, there's multiple solutions out there. The Core is going to be one of them, using a turbo Lamic. Max ECU is another one. Well, and that's the thing, is it has been in Australia, in Europe. It's just now catching up here in America. The Australians just were way ahead of it. And you know, there's dudes down in Australia making 1,000 horsepower on a bone stock 8 HP70 because it has all the torque stuff can be done in the TCU. No, Max ECU goes a different direction. Max ECU does a reflash of the factory TCU to open it up, and then the Max ECU controls it through the factory TCU. So it's not necessarily learn to work with the factory TCU. You completely replace the image on the factory TCU with one that has been stripped down. And I'm not quite sure. No, but I'll talk about that in a second, because that's an interesting thought. And in theory, should be doable. But I've got to think about the way. Yeah, it's like a TCM custom OS. You have to have a specific programmer that can go in and program the TCU with this custom OS. Now, that's one that I've not really dove into, Sound German setup. So I looked at, what's the other one? 8 HP controllers. So there's two ways of doing this. One of them is reflashing the factory TCU and then having a controller control it. So like CAN TCU is one of them. CAN TCU reflashes it and then allows you to control it that way. But it doesn't have a lot of the features that you're going to want with it. That's why I ended up going with the Turbo Lamic, because the Turbo Lamic, you're bypassing the factory TCU and everything is being ran directly in its own standalone unit. That, and I didn't want to have to buy another freaking flash tool just to flash a TCU once. Like, it was, these things are $400 for a one-time use. I mean, I guess you can probably sell it again. Well, conditionally, it comes with a PCB board that you can put in there. I did not use it. I just wired around the TCU on mine. Yeah, I need to look at the Sound German stuff. Find out a little bit more about it. But, and it can be, because if you get the analog version, the flasher, it's got a specific name. It is a mini ACDP, but can be done through XHP, TG Flash, B&W, WinF, KFP, yada yada yada. There's a bunch of tools that will talk whatever the requirement is on this and write the program in. But the analog setup, which, I mean, there's guys running the Turbolamics with carburetors. So if you bring back the big things you need are RPM, manifold air pressure, and that way it can calculate load and calculate torque, because it has on the Turbolamic built-in adaptations for torque, for, you know, smoothing out. And so they say that, like, once you make a change, you need to go in and give it like 20 drive cycles for the adaptations to learn. Really cool stuff. And the information is a little lacking. So Michael, I use Blue Cat. I use HP Tuners, Blue Cat Trans-Tune, but my TCM is my Trinity 6L. Yeah, I mean, that's straightforward. Yeah, Blue Cat works great in an HP Tuners environment for setting up trans-shift points and stuff like that. It's still the go-to on the transmission side of things, and will be until, I don't know. You know what's crazy about this? I'm looking at the Sound German setup. They're using a PCS controller, which is so weird, because the PCS controllers are, as far as I know, made in America. And so a German company is... Is Sound German, or are they just, they've got a name that sounds German? PCS has been doing transmission controllers forever. That's what I used on the Cadillac XLR to run the 5L80. Was a PCS unit. It was the older PCS unit, but two different kits for this transmission. One using the factory TCM and shifter. It's plug and play. And then a full standalone that is available through Dings Racing. Well, let's look at what Dings Racing is doing here then. And this is what I like to see. We got Dings Racing over here. Let's go. Didn't have my microphone set up over there. So we got Dings Racing. Transmission controller. PCS NAG 1. So this is just the module. Just the controller, right? Where's Okay, so this is not a very good full standalone. 8 HP, price start at $1240. NAG 1 1440, supporting 8 HP. Swaps the majority FCA calibrations only. Some TCMs require reprogramming, so that means that if you're using BMW, Jaguar, Audi, Maserati, stuff like that, it's probably not going to work. Also support GM and Ford cam inputs from select ECUs, such as an E38LS, that is one thing I will say. I don't have the software on here. The E38 is supported by the Turbolamic natively. So you hook up the CAN bus on the E38 and it just supposedly works. Gets all the torque values it needs and stuff like that. Ah, sweet, Mark. How is your custom standalone going? Ten speeds have an issue. The 10 speeds are junk. Mitch says, I got a US shift trans controller. Could I use Blue Cat or something to help build my shift profiles? No. That situation, you're just going to have to work through everything. Wouldn't it be easier to have just swapped in a Hemi dropout that had an 8 HP and run factory ECU? I don't know. I mean, in theory, yeah. But you're still going to be limited to factory, calibration parameters are limits. That's the cool thing about the Turbolamic is since you're bypassing the TCU, it's taking over direct solenoid control. I mean, in theory, you could go into the software and totally hose your transmission up if you wanted to. If your MAF takes over above 4K, do you need to tune your VVE? Yes, Schmidt. So he asked if you need to tune your VVE table for wide open throttle above 4K as well. So the MAF kicks in, but you have to remember that the VVE table is always there. Can't get away from it. Now, whenever the MAF kicks in, we shift the weight towards the MAF, the VVE table, instead of doing, so, down low speed, it might do 80% of the fueling. Then as we transition, it might go down to 50. And then whenever we're in MAF mode, it might be doing 10 or 15% of the fueling. Now, anytime that we leave steady state or enter something that is considered transient by the ECU, that weight shifts back over to the VVE table. So what you'll find is most of the time, what happens is guys go out and get tunes done that are MAF only tunes, and whenever they go into transition, they have horrible lean spikes, especially on boosted applications. That's when they blow the motors up, stuff like that, because it goes back to a VVE table that has not been adjusted or tuned properly, and suddenly they're getting detonation and blah, blah, blah. Still needed to mount it on something, but the code is more or less done. That's awesome, man. Good for you for just diving headlong into that stuff. I'll have to find a 6.4 with an 8 HP dropout and just do Hemi swaps instead of LS swaps. Dude. It's okay. De La Soul, there is a reason why. And he asked, how come HP Tuners haven't put out any videos on the core? Is there any reason why? You're never going to see any HP Tuner videos on the core besides promotional videos. Just like you will never see really any tuning videos on HP Tuners for factory applications. And that is all liability-wise. All liability-based. They don't want you watching one of their videos and blowing a motor or something and then trying to sue them. And so they stay away from that 1,000%. And it's, for the most part, from their situation. Well, and that's a good point too. Too many applications. They'd have to hire a guy like me to sit around and make these freaking videos all day long for them. But yeah, it's and that's one of the first things I talked to him way about years ago. Is like, You know, and so the most you're going to get out of them are like the little silly, this is how you do a segment swap, because honestly, you can't blow up your motor doing a segment swap. Worst case scenario, it just doesn't work after you do it. But that's why you've got guys like, like me and Matt over at Sloppy that are willing to try stuff out and see if we can break it, or, you know. And that's why whenever I'm doing, and I haven't done one in a long time, like a test InTune video, which I used to like do, where we go in and just pick a random table and change stuff to see what happens. Like, I put a disclaimer on those, like, hey, because you can't expect everybody to be smart enough to know that, hey, whenever I'm going in here and changing these values and getting runaway throttle and almost driving the Super Auto off a cliff, like, you shouldn't do this yourself. Like, I can't be responsible that if we find a way that you can kill yourself or wreck your vehicle. Could you imagine a dual overhead cam Hemi? Like, I feel like Dodge is so far behind on engines. And like, okay, so these Ford guys, and if you're a Ford guy in here, you know, listen, I'm not hating just to hate, but if I hear one more guy talk about how badass the 5.0 Coyote is, I'm going to vomit. Like, it's been raise your hand if you've been on something like Instagram or Facebook or something in the last week where every Ford guy is like, oh my God, why would I spend $200,000 on a Corvette that makes over 1,000 horsepower whenever I could just spend mods on my Coyote and make more power? Hey, no, you can't. If you're posting that shit online, you can't. You're not the person making power. You know? Sorry. So, like, I'm over these Ford guys. And the Coyote is a great motor. It was a great motor whenever Cadillac released it back in the 90s. Sorry, not sorry. You have a North Star in your car. That is all it is. It is not anything new, special, groundbreaking stuff. You have a Cadillac North Star. And you bored it out to 5 liters instead of 4.6 liters. Nothing is new. You guys did not invent dual overhead cam V8s. There were plenty of other people doing it. I hate to break it to you. You know. Yeah, Andrew, you're right. Listen, give me $500,000. I can build you a Briggs & Stratton that'll make 1,000 horsepower. Like, that I don't know. Ford people are just a different breed, man. Like, I'm sorry that you had the Voodoo and everybody loved it, and then Corvette said, hold my beer, and came out with a 5.5 liter flat plane motor that just absolutely makes the Voodoo look like dog crap. Hey, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm sure somebody makes full billet block 2 strokes that we could jam, 250 pounds of boost into. You wouldn't even be able to mow the lawn. You'd just be digging trenches out there on your riding lawnmower. Man, you guys are getting me on a soapbox tonight. Get me all riled up. On a 4L80 4x4 3/4 ton cruiser, occasionally small trailer pulling, when would you recommend commanding lockup? That's a great question, Mitch. That is a great question. Generally, whenever I talk about lockup, I'm saying we're only locking up in 4th gear whenever we're at cruising. We don't want to lose our torque multiplication. But whenever you get into towing and stuff like that, because temps are a lot more concerning, that's whenever the tow haul button really comes in to not only change the shift profiles, but also to change when we're allowing it to lock up, so we're not just smoking the clutches. Listen, I love the Voodoo. I could really care less about the Coyote. Here's the thing. They're too damn big. The motors are huge. So whenever you're talking about a motor that is bigger than a big block Chevy, I'm out, because I don't care. It's bigger than a Hemi. It's bigger than a big block Chevy. So there's no reason to ever use a Coyote. Just put a big block Chevy in it if you want to make real horsepower. So show me how many Coyotes are making 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated, and then we'll have conversations about them being able to be, badass motors. But whenever you can make 1,000 horsepower on a naturally aspirated big block and then throw boost on it, like there's a reason why there aren't guys in pro mods with Coyotes. There's the Snot Rocket. Is it even a Coyote anymore? Like, there's 2 or 3 fast Coyotes out there, and in the grand scheme of things, they're not fast. So, what's the point of even arguing? Listen, it's a great motor. I'm not saying that, but it is not the correct platform to make over 1,000 horsepower on. I don't care what anybody says. I'll go to my grave on that one. Hell, even Ford's big crate engine is a push rod, Well, and you're right, ICT car guy. And I'll be honest with you, as much as I hate to say it, the Fox body Mustang is one of the best platforms for drag racing. If you're not building a all-out tube chassis car, a Fox body is, because of the dimensions, the wheelbase, that thing is about perfect for a drag car. Great instant center, stuff like that. But there's also, and everybody's like, oh, yeah. Everybody just puts an LS in it. Well, there's a reason. Because you can make 1,500, 2,000 horsepower with an LS for pennies over what you'd spend on a Coyote. Check out Build It Yourself. They built a V10 Ford and put it in a newer Continental, like the Triton. Why in the hell would you spend a single penny on the Triton? It's like the worst big block motor ever created. Even worse than the gas era 454s. Those things not only drink gas, they had no torque or power while they were drinking gas. Wild question. Have you done much or any power sports tuning? No. Now, if I was still in Oklahoma, I would be all about doing side-by-side stuff. I don't have a place to put one. Really don't have anywhere nearby to ride one, or even jet skis. I used to own jet skis back when I lived in Oklahoma. I ain't going out on the water up here. Even this week while I was struggling through this heat wave, I was like, I don't, going to the rivers and lakes around here does not sound appealing. Well, and you're right, Andrew. Yeah, all the moving parts on dual rated cab engines is scary, but it's just the chances of something to crap the bed and eat itself are, tenfold. Hey Red, I have a license P0102 file, but it's auto, and I'm going to a TH400. What do I change? P01. You should be able to do a find a tune for a manual that will segment swap into that. P01s are easy to segment swap. I don't know. Can you just turn off the transmission control? There's probably a lot less that's going to fight you with on P01. Now, 4th and 5th gen, that's where it gets... You might be able to just throw it in a Turbo 400 and just go to town and it not care. What is the P01 out of? That'd be the question on whether or not there's a segment to swap into it. Let's see here. Logs tune. Let's go to a 99 Camaro. Yeah, just go into the trans section and change it to manual. I think on the PCMs, that's all you have to do. Here's the nice thing, Jason. If you had a North Star Cadillac and you wanted to engine swap it to a Coyote, it'll fit. It'll fit. Let's see here. Sup, fellas. Self-tuned my 17 Silverado, truck north, 2800 stall. Circle D with long tubes. Finally pulled the trigger on wideband. Still stalling at 2100 RPMs. One, are you trying to do MAF first? With those mods, you're probably going to have to go in and start doing VE first. Because I guarantee you, 2000 is where you really start seeing a significant airflow shift. And in fact, I'm doing a Camaro right now that's a... I can't remember. Late 19s, early 2000s Camaro. Kind of the same setup. Cam, long tube, stuff like that. And I was really staggered at how lean the thing started getting at that 2000 to 2500 RPMs. Like, we're talking 20, 30, 40% lean. And that's why I told the guys, like, wow, this thing is breathing. Like, this combination really is sucking some air down. That's what I like to see, you know. As much as you don't want to see lean, seeing lean whenever you do mods means that you have got more air. You are making more power. Kyle, what parameters do I need to shut off when tuning? You want to turn off your long terms and DFCOs, the big one, unless you want to filter it out using the accelerator pedal, you know. If not, you'll get a bunch of negative data whenever it's cutting fuel. So DFCO, cat over temp, and then please tell me you've got a wideband, because you said turn off the long terms. Technically, you want to turn off all your fuel trims. But if you're doing narrowband tuning, obviously that's not going to work. 4-valve custom heads. Holy crap, they spent some money. Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think the Triton was a 4-valve. DFCO still works, and you will want to turn off CFCO also. Man, see, you got this. You know this. That's crazy. I'll have to look that up, Schmidt. Always like interesting stuff. Truck's running so good thanks to you. No, thanks to you, Juan. You did it. You did it yourself. Kind of want to leave it alone, but better lockup at launch. You like better lockup at launch. Oh, you're talking about stalling on the trans. Okay. Sorry, Juan. I did not understand what you meant. So you're wanting to, are you wanting to get into a higher RPM? It's not stalling high enough for you. Man, there's nothing you can do about that short of just calling whoever it is and having them adjust it, the torque converter, unfortunately. So, and that's the problem. Like, did you buy an off-the-shelf Circle D, or did you call Circle D and spec them out? Because there's so many things that goes into what the actual stall that you're going to hit is, and it's power, weight, all these different things. And so, like, it was made to order. I would call them up and be like, hey, this thing's not doing what it was supposed to do. They should offer to restall it for you. I would hope for free, but for cheap, at least. Will the Gen 353 run without a vehicle speed sensor? Yeah, Gen 3, I don't know, man. Gen 4 and Gen 5, you can get them to run without a speed sensor. But they default back to using one of the wheel sensors. I don't know about the 5.3. In theory, the Gen 353 still has StabiliTrak, so they're still monitoring wheel speed, so they still have a speed that they can reference. Okay, you get one free stall. Like, you should have enough information now that they can get that thing set up right. So if it was targeting 2800 and it's only getting to 21, they'll know what to do. Oh, Andrew, you don't have to puff me off. Am I crazy for putting a 572 in an 84 S10? No, man. You're awesome. And you probably have a mullet. And I respect that, Ethan. If you don't, you will have a mullet once you're done putting a 572 in a 84 S10. Any tune tips on fresh engine, chop capper cam, 243 heads, milled 20, TBSS intake, and long tubes. ECU was tuned for the same mods, just different cam when I got the truck. What cam did you have beforehand to now? Honestly, is going to be the biggest thing. But if it had an aftermarket cam in already, like, the thing should fire up and allow you to drive it out to $3 or $4 grand from the get-go. Turn on closed loop, let closed loop correction, because you're not going to see more than 10%, 15%, lean. That's within the realm of closed loop being able to compensate so you can do break-in properly, make sure and get it under vacuum. Ethan says it loves to spin the tires. And when it's spinning the tires, the hair at the back of your neck grows longer at a faster rate. That's a scientific fact whenever you have that big of a big block in an S10. That's why I had to go to the get a haircut, because I thought about firing up the Nova, and I was like, dude, the hair's already so long. If I fire the Nova up with this hair, I'm going to look like Fabio. So I went and chopped it all off. That way I could turn the car on. Swapping the Gen 353 into a truck, and I haven't searched up how to hook up the VSS to the old school transfer case. I don't know, man. You're outside of my realm. You're diving into Gen 3 swap stuff. But that's the cool thing. Somebody's done it. If you do enough digging, hey man, Red, jump on ChatGPT. Ask that question on ChatGPT. Let it search through all the forums and see what the answer is. And then take that answer and cross-reference it to see if it's right. It's like putting 850 rear wheel horsepower LSA in a red line sky. Oh, yeah, Mitch, I was asking you what cam was in there before the Chupacabra. No, one, I got rid of the Super Auto after it caught fire. Yeah, I got rid of the Super Auto after it caught fire. Sold it. It's in Kansas now. I haven't talked to that guy in forever. Had to comp cams, custom ground by BTR, similar lift, but duration LSA different. Okay. Yeah, as I said earlier, you'll be fine. You know, leave closed loop on. It'll have enough room to correct for the changes in our cam, and then just go out and break in the motor. But pull logs, you know, while you're doing your break-in drives and stuff like that, and make adjustments. But I'm going to tell you right now, with the cam being the only big change on that, you're not going to have any issues getting up to enough RPMs and doing vacuum drops and stuff like that. Leave open loop STFT on. You can turn it off. Honestly, I don't even know if it does a damn thing. Like, that's an oxymoron. Open loop short-term fuel trims. I think all it does is carry forward your last short-term fuel trim whenever you go into open loop. So whenever you're in closed loop and you start to accelerate up and you hit the point where you get into PE, if it was adding 4% there, it carries on that 4% beyond there. So I am pretty darn sure, and if N2LS was in here, he would correct me, that whenever you have closed loop STFT off, open loop doesn't matter. That'd be an easy thing to test and find out for sure. But I'll just make assumptions for now. Okay, the dogs are barking, which means it's about time for me to wrap it up. Need you back in the truck. I got a Colorado, man, with the Turbo Max. I'm in a truck. I don't think anybody's really doing mods for it, but I'd love to have a bigger turbo on that thing. Thing has great low end. The torque on that variable vane turbo is mind-blowing for such a small motor. But that thing just falls flat on its face above 3,000. Oh, I'm just talking about whenever you're doing break-in. You know, you want to go up to certain RPMs, then you want to let off the throttle completely to put vacuum on the motor to help get the ring sealed in. So watch somebody's video on doing engine break-in driving. They'll kind of go into some of the stuff that you want to do. How's core ECU going, Kyle? We are 99% there. So there's going to be, technically I could probably fire the thing up this weekend if I want to. I still haven't ordered a drive shaft. I know, I'm being lazy. I've got a lot of other stuff going on sorting out the transmission stuff, but that's all going to be getting done in the next couple weeks. So, and then we're going to start deep diving into it, which I'll be honest with you, Kyle, you missed the first part of it where I talked about it, so go back and watch the first part of this stream where I talk a little bit more about it. Yeah, because there's a lot of information in there and some of the stuff that's going to be coming up here soon. What do you mean conditionally accepted? You're saying for a test stand, Haltech Rebel. That'd be an awesome engine stand setup. Dude, I remember whenever the Sky and what's the Saturn version. Pontiac was the Sky, right? The two little convertibles. Whenever they first came out. I'm trying to think. Saturn, Sky, Pontiac, Solstice. Okay. Yeah, Kyle, I do have an older one, and it may address the E40 in particular, but it goes into changing the scaling and stuff like that. The big thing is whenever you do that, pay attention to your air mass, because your air mass calculations go off. And this is what'll make or break, because essentially if you double your stoic table and half your injector flow to get the same flow out of the injectors, whenever you do that, your air mass calculation gets cut in half. And so suddenly whenever you are making this many grams of air mass, now it says you're making this much. That is a ton of timing down there. If you're not careful, it'll move you at wide open throttle into an area of your timing table that is throwing 40 degrees of timing at wide open throttle. So you need to, that is the most critical thing, is your timing. Check that out. So technically anywhere that air mass is referenced is being affected whenever you scale the injectors, but the timing table is the primary killer. And I've had a few people that have blown motors because of not adjusting the timing table, and then the air mass, new air mass calculated value is so far off, it cuts it in half, and now it's putting you at 35 to 40 degrees above 3,000. So I remember when those first came out. What year was that? That had to have been around 2008, right? Pontiac Solstice. 2009, 2005. Okay. So it was 2005. I went to SEMA that year. May have been 2006. It was 2005 or 2006. I went to SEMA, and Mallet had them there with LS2s jammed into the hood. Things were brand new. And it's like, why wouldn't you just do this, guys? Why wouldn't you just go ahead and do this? Put the V8 in. Like, sell us the car that we want. A two-door, like, not necessarily convertible, but I could put a hard top on it with a V8. Like, that's not a Corvette. Like, yeah, a go-kart. Yeah, make it. Let's do the go-kart stuff. It serves a different purpose then. Yeah, so and that's what they should have done, Shane. Pontiac should have released this as the Fiero. Pontiac Fiero with, granted, it's front engine, not mid-engine. I should probably do a Fiero, huh? I know for a fact my stepdad's got a couple Fieros sitting around rotting. I should just call him up and send a trailer by, pick one up, and we could. I've got other stuff to do. I'm getting off here. You guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning. You guys are terrible, terrible influences.